Money FM 89.3, the best of the afternoon update. Viewpoint.
That's right, you're listening to Viewpoint on Money FM 89.3. I'm Lynn Lee. Malaysia officially began enforcing its long-delayed vehicle entry permit, or VEP, for foreign registered vehicles. And within just the first hour, 10 Singapore drivers were fined for not having a valid VEP tag. Well, it's a rollout that's been years in the making, but for some motorists, the start of enforcement has felt sudden, confusing, and even costly. Joining us now to walk us through what's happening on the ground is Harith Mustaffa, journalist at the Straits Times. Harith has been covering this story in Johor and speaking directly to those affected. Harith, thanks for joining us.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Right, so you were out and about very early this morning, or should I say very late last night. The VEP enforcement pretty much kicked in as soon as the clock struck midnight, right? And by 1 a.m., 10 drivers had already been fined. So what was the situation like at the checkpoints?
So I think we came at around 11:30. So officers from the Malaysia's Road Transport Department, JPJ, as everyone knows it, so they started setting up their blockade outside the exit road from the TIQ, the checkpoint at Johor Bahru. Mm-hmm. So those who were caught without valid VP, which means they did not register for the VP and they did not activate it, were pulled aside to the side road for them to be actually given a fine. Mm-hmm. So it was quite a big operation. There were about 55 officers with SUVs and even like a mobile JPJ service van that was already ready to collect the fines. So it was quite an elaborate setup that they had last evening, yeah.
And I'm sure you spoke with some of the motorists. Were they mostly caught off guard, or had they just not gotten around to activating their tags?
Yeah, actually, so that was one of the things that struck out during my observations, because they were very surprised at the enforcement that was being done on July 1st. So from what I know, I think in some of the social media chats and even on the popular Telegram chats that talks about JB and customs issues, they were already sort of thinking that there would not be an enforcement. So people whom I talked to were saying that, they were quite surprised at the checks that were done last night. So I think some of the drivers, they were just going into JB for a short trip, a fuel top-up or for dinner. And then some of them were just out for dinner with their partners, and suddenly they had to fork out a $90 fine. Yeah.
Wow. So I guess it's because it's been postponed a couple of times, and probably people thought that approval alone was enough and didn't need to install the tag. Yeah. But, was there a particular step in the process that most people tripped over in terms of the approval and then the activation of the tag?
Yeah, so I've been monitoring the VEP situation since October quite regularly. So the most common issue that's being faced by Singaporeans is actually on the registration part. Because for most Singaporean drivers, I found out, at least the ones that I've met, the cars that they own are pre-owned cars or used cars. So some of these cars already have the VP registered under the previous owner. So for you to sort of register a VP under your name, you have to deregister the VP under the previous owner's name. Yeah, so there's a couple of steps there. And so when you have to deregister the previous owner and then register a new one, that's where I think Singaporeans face trouble in trying to get the steps right. And after which, once that process is being done, they still have to go through the process of getting an appointment and then fixing the tag and then activating the tag. All of this requires several platforms you need to interface, such as you need to register using the JPJ website. You have to go to the TC Sense website. And then you need to interface the tag, the VP RFID tag, with the Touch and Go app, which is being used as the e-wallet, which is very different than how we are used to in Singapore, right? Because, most of our transactions are done under the LTA platform, and if we need to make any transactions, say, to pay for tolls, we just use our cash cards. So it's a big difference, I think, for most Singaporeans, yeah.
Wow, hearing you talk about all this, it's made me confused, not to mention the motorists out there. So talking about confusion, tell me about this My VP system as well as the Touch and Go e-wallet. Did that come up in your conversations?
Yeah, so once you have the VP fixed, basically functions as an automatic e-wallet. You no longer have to draw out your card to make payments on, for example, highway tolls, and also to pay for the entry tolls into JB. So actually, the flip side of this whole saga is that once you have the VEP settled, it's actually much more convenient because you don't have to stop for tolls, and everything is transacted quite quickly. Yeah, but the trouble is that once you fix the VEP tag on your car, you need to fulfill certain requirements and send it over to JPJ to get it approved. And then subsequently, you need to activate it, and then it takes some time for you to interface with the system and get the process approved. And then subsequently, some motorists also face trouble with the VEP tags not being able to be read at these gantries. For example, when they're entering customs, so they found out that cars can't be read, the VEP tags can't be read. So these were some of the issues that they were facing as well. Yeah.
Okay. Coming back to how you said people you spoke to were quite surprised, but Malaysia's authorities had said there would be no surprises this time because it's been postponed for quite a long time. 10 fines in the first hour. It really suggests otherwise. So from your reporting, was the messaging leading up to today clear enough?
I think the messaging was clear because I think they've given enough leeway to have the registration done. And in fact, in February, I ran a story about how queues at the VP centres and the inquiry centres were empty. So there were no one who were there to do the VPs. And then after that, when the announcement came in on June 4th, that's when you sort of have this huge amount of people coming in to have their VPs registered. So I think, to be fair, the messaging has been quite clear since October that they're serious about enforcing. But, there is that, I would say in Singapore, there would be, I think among Singaporean motorists, they still exercise some doubt, which is seen from my observations over the months. I've seen that the numbers dwindled at the VP centres. It was empty, the counters were empty, and staff were just sitting down using their phones and waiting for people to come in. So I guess, and in fact, some of those that I interviewed today and yesterday were saying that, the announcement, they didn't know that they're really going to enforce it. They're trying to gamble with their chances. And so then yesterday happened. So
So maybe that's why it's empty. No one's rushing because they think it's not going to happen, right?
Yeah.
Okay, any feedback on the RFID tags themselves? Were there cases of people getting fined despite registering correctly?
Yeah, so I think yesterday the Director General of the JPJ was saying that in terms of enforcement, they're not taking chances. So regardless if you have the VP tag installed, but if it's not activated or you have registered for a VP and the VP is not installed or activated, you will still get a fine. So I think for motorists who may be facing this issue, they could spell a lot of trouble.
Okay. And right now, enforcement is concentrated only at the Johor checkpoints.
Yeah, so it's situated in locations outside the checkpoints because they don't want to have any congestion going on in the checkpoints. Yeah. So it's just outside the checkpoint.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any indications at all if cameras or mobile units might eventually be used further inland?
Yeah, so interesting. So I think yesterday the Director General said that they're going to implement a phased approach into these efforts. So they're going to be focusing in just Johor first. And they said they have plans to expand it to other states. But, we have yet to see any updates on that. Yeah.
Okay. Just out of curiosity, what happens if a driver enters through, JB, but exits via a smaller checkpoint? Is that possible with no officers? Is the system centralized enough to track that?
So when you leave Johor, you need to pass by certain gantries. So at those gantries, in fact, even when I drive in and out, you can already see whether or not you have a VEP registration valid on your car. So some cars without VEP registration, when you exit the gantry or when you exit the checkpoint, the LED sign that's placed on the side of the road will actually say that VEP is not registered. Please register for VEP soon. And you see similar signs pasted all around the checkpoint. Yeah. So the question is whether or not there is, if you're on an unlucky day, there's an enforcement check going on, they will pull you to the side. So that's where I guess, the authorities would do its thing to pull your cars aside. Yeah.
Harith, from the Singapore motorists you spoke to, apart from surprise, what's the mood? Frustration? Anxiety?
It's a fair balance. I think the bulk of it is, to some degree, frustration because, JB is 300,000 people come in and out of the border every day. So JB is a very popular place for shopping and for a weekend hangout for Singaporeans. I think the frustration is there because, right now they are not sure if the next trip they go into JB would mean that they would have to pay $90. Right?
Yeah.
So I think they're worried that, their next trip could be an expensive one because they have to pay a fine. So there is that uncertainty there. But to be fair, there are also motorists who are quite balanced in their view, and they say that, hey, actually, this rule has been communicated, 7 years ago, and it was being emphasized last year in October. So we should, by right, follow the rules. And the same way applies to motorists in Malaysia coming into Singapore, right? Because they have to abide by our rules as well. So there is a fair mix of drivers. Some are frustrated, some are understanding. And I feel that the bulk of the frustration comes with understanding how to navigate all these platforms that you have to access to register and to activate the VEP. Yeah.
Harith, at this point, are businesses in Johor concerned that this could lead to fewer trips across the border, especially over the weekends?
Well, actually, I spoke to the Hawker and Merchant Association in JB. So they said that they are prepared and, in fact, they are used to the situation at the moment. And they were saying that in terms of how big this situation is in affecting their business, they said, well, it's not going to affect them that much. Previously, I wrote a story about parking woes in JB. So, in fact, parking is actually a big issue in Johor Bahru because there are lots of workers coming in and out of Singapore and Malaysia. So, in terms of the public areas where you find eateries and shops, you can't find parking even to park your car. So, for Singaporean motorists coming in, that's going to be a big challenge. So, they are already feeling the pinch from that situation. So, they're saying that in terms of how this thing could affect them, they said not much. And they're waiting out to see how this may change in a couple of days. Yeah.
Okay. Big picture, do you think this adds friction to the usual flow of people and commerce between Singapore and Malaysia?
Well, in terms of the numbers that we've seen yesterday, I think there are more than 240,000 registered VPs. So I think, will they be a big effect? I'm not sure because you still see the borders very busy, even till today. So I think Singaporeans will still come. Perhaps maybe there might be a drop in the coming days, but I think most of the VPs, the numbers are quite big, the number of registrations coming in. So I think there won't be much of a big issue per se, yeah. Yes. I think JB is still JB. People still want to go JB.
Of course, and this probably will be a short-term problem. And what are you personally watching in the coming days?
Well, I think I'm more concerned about how this rule affects those with cars registered under companies, right? So they are not individually owned cars. They're under companies. So I think there needs to be more clarity on it because these cars are exempt from a fine at the moment. So you just need to have the VEP registered. You can still enter. You don't have to have it activated yet. So there is still that exemption. So I'm going to see how this may affect because some of these company owners, they have work based in JB or they have offices in JB. They have operations set up in Johor Bahru. So they are the ones who need to commute regularly across the border, not just for their own private affairs, but for work. So I think these groups are the ones who I'm actually monitoring next. Yeah.
Interesting to see how travel behavior changes, especially, this weekend, right?
Yeah, of course.
Harith, thank you so much for being with us on Viewpoint. Harith Mustaffa, journalist at the Straits Times. You can read his report on today's VEP enforcement and the early reactions. It's now at straitstimes.com. You're listening to Viewpoint on Money FM 89.3.
To listen to more great interviews, download our podcasts at audio.sg or download the audio app. That's AWEDIO, audio at the App Store and Google Play.